Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Baruchim Abayim. We're continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we're on top of Yud Aleph, Amud Bet. The top line, today's Amud is being learned as a Zechut Rufa Shalema for Daniel Moshe ben Farangis Avraham, Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, and Shira bat Chemda. Today's Amud is also being learned, the Lu Nishmat Betzalel ben Rafael Vester. And the Nishmat Esther bat Naftali Tzvi Halevi. This month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shei family and Mahbubi families. Should be an ultimate zchut for all of their mishpachot. Amen. So we want to go back just for a moment. We are discussing all the things that happened on Rosh Hashanah. And one of the things that we saw agreeable, according to everyone, was that both, according to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds the world was created on Tishrei, and Rabbi Yehoshua, who the world was created on Nisan, the Avot also were born in the same Tkufa that Rabbi Eliezer holds. Avot were born on Tishrei, and Rabbi Yehoshua holds they were born on Nisan, referring to Abraham and Yaakov Avinu. And what's interesting is each one of them holds that they also passed away in the same tkufa. If you hold that Avraham and Yaakov were born on Tishrei, they also passed away on Tishrei. And if you hold that they were born on Nisan, they also passed away on Nisan. So the Gemara says, how do I know? And the Gemara says, because we know this from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ben me'ah ve'esrim, vayomer alehem ben me'ah ve'esrim shana anochi hayom. Today, I am 120 years old, which if you pay attention, the word today is really not needed. Just say, Ben ma'ah ve'esrim shana anochi, I am 120 years old. And I can't go and come, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told me, etc., and then give the torch over to Yeshua. Vezeu, why do you have to say hayom? Ma talmud lomar hayom, said the Gemara. And we darshan from it that he's telling him, today is my birthday. Today, who was the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu on the job, also was his birthday, his 120th birthday. So the Gemara says, you learn from here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is memaleh shenoteim yemehem v'shenoteim shel tzadikim miyom leyom mishana leshana. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fills up the years of tzadikim, as the pasuk says, et mispar yamecha amaleh. A full life. And that's a sign of tzidkut for the tzaddikim, right? So we spoke about the fact that the Gemara, the identical Gemara, is also in Kiddushin of Lamed Chet, and there the Maharsha is very baffled with the question that, well, it's a simple question, but once you think about it, it really is something to be bothered by. Says the Maharsha, wait, if you are filling up someone's years, it's going to be a day before. So if Moshe Rabbeinu, which we know from Masechet Megillah, was also born on Adar, Zayin Adar, really should be passing away in 6th of Adar, because that's how Mispar Yamecha Amaleh would work. So we spoke yesterday briefly from Maran Chatam Sofer. In a number of places he brings this in his Tshuvot and in his Drashot, and he brings from one of his prized Talmidim, Maram Ash. He says a beautiful, beautiful insight. He says, look, what the answer to this Maharsha is that really Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zayin Adar, and he also passed away in Zayin Ba'adar. You will ask, Mispar Yamecha Amaleh should be Vav Ba'adar. This is no. Because not only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Memaleh Yemehem Veshnotem, but he also is even the Sha'ot, even the hours. So therefore, if he was born, say, at 12 o'clock, then he passed away 11:59, and that's exactly from year to year, from day to day, from hour to hour. Says the Maram Ash, even though Shelo mechashvina nashaot, that normally speaking we don't calculate the hours. When we know we're in the Torah, we calculate hours. Days start, days finish, right? And we had this whole sugya previously, miktzat hayom kekulo. That you go through 1 hour of the day is considered like a whole day, right? By Avelut, Rahman Litzal, the 7th day, in morning already, you sit for 1 minute, and that's considered the whole day. You get up. and so on and so forth. We spoke about this, how 1 hour could be a little bit, could be considered a whole day. But says Maramash, there's one area that we do calculate hours, and that's by kodshim. By korbanot that are kodshe kodashim, by kodashim, the hours even are important. You want to know how many days the animal is, whatever it is, you have to go hour to hour. And it says by Moshe Rabbeinu was kodesh kodashim. His life was a life of kedusha. That type of a life, like kodshim, you go even after hours. So not only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be memaleh yemehem v'shnotehem, but he's going to also be memaleh the hours of their life. So therefore, it ends up being that if he was born on Zayin Ba'adar, he's going to also pass away on Zayin Ba'adar, because you have to also fill up the hours of the life. When a person lives that type of a life, that every minute counts, every hour counts, by doing Torah mitzvot, that life, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also, just like you count your days, you count this. Limnot yamenu ken hodas, says David HaMelech. Teach us how to count our days, make our days count. So that some person that has even the hours of the life count, that person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also makes sure that Mispar Yamecha Amaleh is not just the number of the days, but it's also the number of hours. Parenthetically, just something very interesting, the altar of Novardok, the Mashgiach of the Novardok Yeshiva, he instituted in his yeshiva a Seder Limud that was meant to be only for 5 minutes. A 5-minute Seder Limud. The Gabbai would clap on the bima, they would start learning whatever Sefer the whole yeshiva was learning together, with their chavrutas alone, and exactly in 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 59 seconds plus 1 second, he would give another clap and everyone would stop it. It was a very specifically cut out seder for 5 minutes a day. And the reason he did it was twofold. A, he wanted to show chashivut of time to the Talmidim, that even 5 minutes matters so much, right? They asked, actually, the Chatan Sofer, they asked this to Rabbi Chaim Volozhin as well, how did he become so distinctly different than his friends? And he said in 5 minutes. So, 5 minutes is every 5 minutes that they wasted, I didn't, right? I was using the pockets of the time that every person could find here and there, and that's the key to the greatness that he had. Also, there's a Yid in Eretz Yisrael, a number of decades ago, he would make an annual Siyum HaShas. He would go through the entire Shas Bavli every year. And everybody knew, all the Gdolei Yerushalayim, all the Gdolei Ador were invited to the Siyum HaShas. And 1 year after having finished and give the Siyum HaShas, 2 months later, he invited them for another Siyum HaShas. Everyone was like, oh, another Chazara in such a short time, they come in, everyone wanted to ask. He says, no, this is a completely different seder. I don't even know how many years it's been. I started from Masechet Brachot, but this seder is specifically for Zman Sheinam Zman, for times that are not considered pockets. You're waiting for a Brit for 2 minutes. You're waiting in line for this. You're waiting, for your wife to get ready, or so on and so forth. Those are the times that I went, started from the beginning of Shas. I don't know how many years it's been, but I finished Shas in Bizman She'eno Zman, in times that are not times. That's the chashivut of Zman, at Mispar Yamecha Amaleh. That was the first reason that the author of Novardok made such a takana. The second one was, surprisingly, believe it or not, when you have a consistent seder, even if it's for 5 minutes only, after a few weeks, few months, you see you finish the sefer, a whole sefer. They finished in that 5 minutes, and another sefer. By the end of the year, you see you finish 2, 3, 4 svarim in a small pocket of time, so long as you're consistent. So you wanted to show them not just the chashivut of zman, but also the importance of consistency and a commitment. When you committed to a seder and you never miss, then the amount of accomplishment that a person can have is unbelievable. So that's at Mispar Yamecha Amaleh, a beautiful insight from Aram Ash, that Moshe Rabbeinu was Kodshe Kodashim, and by Kodashim, you actually do count the hours, it's not just the days. So that's one thing that we left kind of like on the table. The second thing that we discussed was the fact that the tefillot of our imahot, Sarah imenu, Rachel imenu, and also Hannah, the mother of Shmuel Hanavi, were finally accepted after years of being barren on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu finally said, okay, enough is enough. Right? Hashem pakad et Sarah, vayizkor et Rachel, right? And that year is when they had the babies. There's a beautiful insight from Reuben Marconius in his Sefer Nisoseh Or. He says he brings the Zohar Kadosh in Parashat Pinchas. He says whenever the pasuk says Vayehi is lashon tsar, right? Anytime you have Vayehi is lashon tsar. Says the Zohar, if you have Vayehi bimei, it's tsar vadai. Like Vayehi b'machashverosh, that's really bad, right? That's really, really bad. And Vayehi hayom, says the Zohar, is Yoma Kasha. It's a Yoma de Sara. It's a day that is a difficult day. Now, the Zohar Kadosh says that if you pay attention, at the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, this is specifically talking about Hannah, starts Perek Aleph, Pasuk Aleph, Vayihi ish echad min haramatayim sofim, that already you have the Vayihi there. Mehar Ephraim mushmo Elkanah. This is the story of the father of Shmuel, Elkanah, who was a tremendous tzaddik. The Gemara talks about this. We've had these discussions before of how he riled up everyone else to go up to Yerushalayim, and so on. He had two wives. He had Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had a bunch of kids. Hannah had no kids, and Peninnah and Hannah, they had their conversations that was very painful for Hannah. We discussed this all in Masechet Brachot some 2 years ago when we discussed Daf Lamed Aleph, and says the pasuk over here in pasuk Dalit, Vayihi hayom vayizbach Elkanah v'natan lePeninnah, and says the Zohar, Vayihi hayom over here is the day of interpretation, which is the day of Rosh Hashanah, is the Yom Adin, right? This happened on Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah is the day that they have this conversation over Seudah, and she gets very hurt, and she gets up, right? V'kiasata sarata, Peninnah would say things that were very hurtful to Hannah, and she gets up, and she goes to Makom HaMikdash, she goes to where the Mishkan was, and she's davening, right? She's davening, Ve'kola lo yishamea. Right, we all remember this story. She's there, she's besides herself, she's davening to Hashem, and Raks fatea naot ve'kola lo yishamea. Her lips are moving, but her voice is not heard. Right? Her voice is not heard. So Eli HaKohen sees this, v'yachshavea l'shikora, and he thinks that she is some drunken woman, and he gives her a whole mussas shmuz of how can you do this, and so on. And then she clarifies and says, no, I never drank anything. I'm just a shakashat ruach. I've had a hard time. I'm davening to Hashem, right? Famously, the Gaon writes that this was a message actually that lit up on the chest plate of the Kohen Gadol, who was Eli, right? The letters of sin or shin, chaf, and wav, not wav, reish, hey, is sechura or keshera or shikora. You can read it all three ways, and he read it as shikora because that's how it looked like. But really, it was either keshera or schura, that she is kasher, or that she's going to get finally her schar of the prayers of years past. So says the pasuk, this Vayihi Hayom, says Zohar Kadosh was on Rosh Hashanah. Now, there is a difficult question on the Gemara there in Masechet Brachot, Daf Lamed Aleph. The Gemara learns from here that when you daven lachash, it has to be like the Shulchan Aruch Paskins in Siman Kuf Aleph. It should be quiet. Zohar Kadosh itself actually says any tefillah that's heard down here is not heard up there. Right? That's a Beautiful way of saying it. If no one should be hearing your voice down here. Now, you should hear it. You should not hear it. The better kabayit. Yes, no. Shulchan Aruch seems to say that you have to hear yourself at least. Zohar HaKadosh seems to say not like that. That's a whole beautiful discussion by itself. But where do we learn that from? From Hannah. Because she was davening, and she was doing Shemona Esrei, and she was not heard by her. So it says, the Maharsha, wait a second. If she's doing what you're supposed to be doing in Shemona Esrei, so why is Eli HaKohen so surprised? To the degree that he thinks that she's a drunken woman. She's doing exactly what it says in Shulchan Aruch you should be doing. Rak sfateh na'ot vekola lo yishamea. What's surprising? We learned the halachot of tefillah from Hannah, after all. And if that's the halachah that you should not be heard by other people when you daven, so then she's doing exactly what you should be doing when davening. So what's the surprise here, right? It's a powerful question. Maharsha is very bothered with this. He struggles through explaining and answering this question. Other Mefarshei Ha'achronim, Rabbi Yehuda, others as well, they have the same question. It's a simple, straightforward question, right? How do you wrap your head around this? So I heard this question and answer from Rabbi Yisraeli Bernstein. He said he brought from Weiss, his Sefer. He writes a beautiful, beautiful answer for this. He says, no, because this tefillah, as we mentioned, based on Zohar HaKadosh right now, was when on Rosh Hashanah. Vayhi Hayom, Zohar says that's Rosh Hashanah. So on Rosh Hashanah, the Rama writes, and it has been a minhag in Klal Yisrael, in Siman Kuf Aleph, Rama writes that there are those who have a minhag, Shulchan Aruch brings this even, there are those who have a minhag on Rosh Hashanah to daven a little bit louder, right? On Yamim Noraim, you daven a little louder. So therefore, this must have been the minhag back in the time of Eli HaKohen as well. So everyone else today is coming to daven. Everyone is like, yelling and screaming and davening out loud. And the only person that's quiet is Hannah. Hence, the surprise element that was there for Eli HaKohen, because she says everyone else is davening. She is besides herself. She's not davening like other people daven. And that was the element of surprise over there, right? But not realizing that even on Rosh Hashanah itself, the special tzaddikim, and that's what the Gemara is learning, they speak quietly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even on the day of judgment, even on the day of Rosh Hashanah. But this is a beautiful insight, putting everything together with having a raya. It's a raya for the Gemara that Hannah's tefillah was accepted what day? At Rosh Hashanah. Because this pasuk, this is Vayhi Hayom, based on the Zohar HaKadosh in Parashat Pinchas, really saying that this was on Rosh Hashanah. That's the day that finally, after 19 years, the tefillah of Hannah was heard. Now the time is not going to allow it, but perhaps we could add one more knech to this as well, that even the tefillah of Isha Shunamit, that was the hostess of Elisha Navi and his Talmid Gehazi, that we also learned about in Masechet Brachot, that also perhaps was on Rosh Hashanah, that Elisha Navi finally gave her the bracha that came through, and this barren woman, that would be the fourth barren woman in Jewish history, that also was Nifkat Berosh Hashanah. So that hence the importance of the day of Rosh Hashanah. So that's so far the two pieces that we wanted to discuss. Then we mentioned that Berosh Hashanah Yatza Yosef Bet Hasurin, and we mentioned that that's also beautiful because if you go through the Chalomot, it's not just that tefillah that's accepted very highly and very, very powerfully, but even the dreams of Rosh Hashanah are so powerful. We brought the whole story in Masechet Brachot Daf Yud Chet, and and how this was perhaps a chalom on Rosh Hashanah, because again, if you say Yosef came out of Beit HaAsurim on Rosh Hashanah, that means the chalom of Paro was the night of Rosh Hashanah, and so were the chalomot of Sar Mashkim v'Sar Ha'ofim, because it says Vayhi miketz shenatayim yamim was exactly 2 years after this encounter between Yosef and Sar HaMashkim, which would be making all of those amazing dreams that changed the course of Jewish history, right? Chalom of Paro changed the course of Jewish history, because that's when Yosef became viceroy of Mitzrayim, and then rose to power, and the rest is history of us going to Mitzrayim and being the nation that we became, and coming out on Pesach and so on and so forth. That whole thing hinges on the Chalom of Paro, which was on Rosh Hashanah. So we spoke about the fact that the Chalomot of Rosh Hashanah are to be taken more seriously as well, because this is the day not just of judgment, but it's a day that the spiritual world is very much close to the physical, and anything that you see and you experience is going to be very much real. So says the Gemara now, let's at least do a little bit. Rosh Hashanah, batla avodah me'avoteinu. On Rosh Hashanah we mentioned that the Jews in Mitzrayim stopped the slavery, basically it ceased. The slavery stopped being, and they stopped working for the Egyptians. So says the Gemara, how do I know? K'tiv hacha ve'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. Over here it says in the 4 leshonot of Geula, one of them is ve'hotzeti, right? Ve'itzalti, ve'galti, ve'lakachti. Right? So the first of the Leshonot HaGeula is Ve'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. I'm going to take you out of the slavery of Mitzrayim. That's the very first step. Ve'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim uchtiv hatam. And over there it says V'asiroti misevel shichmo. Right? V'asiroti misevel shichmo. It says about what? What's the pasuk over there? It's the pasuk in Tehillim, right in the pasukim that we discussed before. Hasiroti misevet shichmo kapab midu tavorna. If you remember, this was the pasuk that was talking about Edot Yosef Samo beseto aleres Mitzrayim. All the pasukim that we darshened that happened on Rosh Hashanah. This is a tag along with those pasukim, and hence this is on Rosh Hashanah as well. So we know that the avodah, the shi'abud, slavery of Mitzrayim, ended on Rosh Hashanah. It says the Gemara, B'Nisan nigalu gedeite. The fact that they came out of Mitzrayim, B'Nisan nigalu, is pashut, right? That we know already. HaChodesh Lachem Rosh Chodashim, etc., etc. But the fact that B'Tishrei Atidin Neigael, we had this machloket of when the Geula HaAtidah is going to be, right? Out of the Galut that we are experiencing right now, B'Tishrei or B'Nisan. Rabbi Eliezer said, B'Nisan nigalu B'Tishrei Atidin Neigael. And Rabbi Yoshua said, no, B'Nisan nigalu B'Nisan Atidin Neigael, right? So says the Gemara, how do I know, according to Rabbi Eliezer, B'Tishrei Atidin Neigael, that the coming of Mashiach is going to be in Tishrei? Atya shofar shofar. We learn it from Gezerah Shavah. I mean, Rabbi Eliezer, at least, learns it, Gezerah Shavah, from shofar shofar. K'tiv hacha. Over here it says, Tiku b'chodesh shofar b'kesei yom chagenu. That's the pasuk that we had by Rosh Hashanah. That you blow shofar in the chag, that the moon is covered. B'kesei yom chagenu. We had that twice already. Uchtiv hatam, and by Geula Atidah it says, Bayom ha'u itakav shofar gadol. The pasuk that speaks about the gathering of all of the exiles in Geula HaAtidah, it says that on that day is going to be a blowing of shofar, says Rabbi Eliezer. I see from the Tikiyat shofar that that's going to be happening actually in Tishrei on Rosh Hashanah. So it says, it's a beautiful pasuk actually in Yeshaya Navi, Perek Chaf Zayin, Vaya bayam hahu ויתקע בשופר גדול, ובאו העובדים בארץ אשור, והנידחים בארץ מצרים. All the scattered galuyot from Assyria and from Mitzrayim, everyone is going to get back together, and that day is going to be, says Rabbi Eliezer, a day of Rosh Hashanah, because says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, who says Benisan atidin leigael, says Benisan nigalu, Benisan atidin leigael. Menalan, how do I know? Amar Krab, because the pasuk says Leil Shimurim hu. Leil Shimurim is the night of Pesach. Leil HaMeshumaru ba, says the Gemara Darshins. This is a day that has been kept in the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind, Misheshet Yemei Bereshit, from the 6th day of creation. This is the day that not only we were saved once from Mitzrayim, but this is the mark day for Geulah HaAtidah as well. And really, the truth is, if you pay attention, the pasuk says it. You know, the Gemara does not speak this out directly, but really the pasukim say it. Just read to you how the pasuk says. Leil Shimurim hu Lashem. This night of the 15th, night of 15th of Nisan is going to be Leil Shimurim Lashem lehotziam me'eretz Mitzrayim, to take them out of Mitzrayim. But the pasuk doesn't end there. It says, "Hu halayla zeh." That is this night for Hashem, LaHashem, Shimurim lechol bnei Israel ledorotam. That is kept for bnei Israel ledorotam, for all generations. So perhaps the diuk of the Gemara is not just from Leil Shimurimu, but this Leil Shimurim that you're going out of Mitzrayim is who Leil Shimurim LaHashem. That is the Leil Shimurim for Hashem, that is going to be kept for Bnei Israel ledorotam. It's going to be kept for the Jews forever. So that forever tells you that Benisan atidin leikar. So says Gemara. Now each one of them, what do they do with the other one? Ve'idach, and the other one, Leil HaMeshumaru ba min hamazikim. Rabbi Eliezer, who holds Benisan nigalu ubetishrei atidin leigael. How does he deal with this whole Leil Shimurim libnei Israel ledorotam? He says no. What he means is it is meshumar min hamazikim. Tosafot actually in Masechet Pesachim Daf Kuftet, they say that's the reason that we have arba kosot. Normally speaking, you would not be able to have. The Gemara says a person that drinks, he should not be drinking in even numbers, right? 2, 4, 6, right? Should not be doing that because of shedim, because of mazikim. Now nowadays we're not very specific about this, but with the time of Chazal they were. So how can you have 4 cups, right? You shouldn't. So Tosafot says, yeah, you're right, but that's all the other nights of the year. But Leil Pesach is Meshumar min hamazikim. There's no mazikim power in the night of Pesach, and that's the drasha of Rabbi Eliezer. And now the Gemara is going to actually go, we're out of time, and it's actually a good place to stop, because now the Gemara is going to go back to Machloket Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua and say, well, it's not just that they are arguing about every important thing that happened in the world, of when the world was created, when the Geulah Atidah is going to be, but it's also a Machloket that they have had across the board by other elements as well. And the Gemara is going to speak about a fantastic, really phenomenal sugya of all the mazalot, how every 2-hour mazal changes, and what mazal is in charge of what element in the world. So that's going to be another shiur B'ezrat Hashem for the next time to come.